fight. We don't have to kill. Everybody in the whole wide world really just needs to chill. No, we don't have to fuss, no, we don't have to fight.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Just Chill with Oliver George. This is episode 72, and this time around, I have a talented actor, producer, and writer sitting here with me who I am very excited to get to know better. But before we get into it, I want to remind you, if you're watching right now on YouTube and would prefer audio only, you can get that on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and other places like that. If you're listening on one of those, though, first off, if you could leave a review, that would be really helpful. But if you didn't know there was a visual side to the show, then please come check it out on YouTube. If you could subscribe while you're there, it really does mean a lot to me. And finally, if you want to reach out to me, maybe you've got a cool guest idea or some feedback about the show, you can hit me up at justchillpodcasting@gmail.com. While you're doing that, let me know if you have any interest in one of these cool holofoil stickers, and I'll send you one free of charge if you just give me your address. Now, as I mentioned already, I have a skilled thespian sitting across from me in the studio who has shared screen time with Hollywood household names like Bruce Willis and Mel Gibson. So very, very happy to have you here, Mr.
Simon Phillips.
I was going to say it, but hey, I've never had a guest introduce themselves. Simon Phillips.
Wow, I thought I'd jump in there. I'm famous for doing that.
There you go, man. Well, thank you for coming, and it's a pleasure to actually make your acquaintance.
Thank you guys for having me in this very cool den. It's a den. I'm
man cave, I suppose.
A man cave.
Nerd
den.
cave.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a while. We were sort of talking about setting this up, so I feel like I got to know you a bit through email, but it's always great to meet someone in the flesh, you know?
Oh, nothing like it, right? There's a bit too much of the, people connecting via Zoom, and so I like it in the flesh.
Same here.
I'm afraid, yep.
Look someone in the eye, old school, yeah. Well, we kind of got into it beforehand, but we were just talking about how you were Irish born, London raised.
That's right.
And Irish, your actual name is Mick Phillips, is it not?
That's right. So I was born Simon Phillips, and then moved to London and when I was 10, and then started to do theatre and stuff like that later. And then a very influential casting director was like, "Hey, you're good. What's your name?" And I was like, "Simon Phillips." And he was like, "What?" I was like, "Simon Phillips." He's like, No, Simon Phillips. It's cleaner. And I was like, "Yeah." And then in that instant, I abandoned all my heritage. My father,
Did you find, because I go by Oliver George, but George is my middle name. As we were saying, we're Irish. I'm a Reilly. But I did find when I started doing stand-up comedy and using that, moniker, that it was helpful in the way that I could sort of disassociate and there was daytime me, Oliver Reilly, and then when I would go do comedy, I was Oliver George all of a sudden,
Yeah, I mean, you're always sort of being someone else anyway, but you don't want to come with any sort of preconceptions, do you, when people think you can only be Irish if you had Reilly.
Exactly,
That's all you could do. So I suppose it sort of wipes the slate clean. Simon Phillips doesn't tell anybody anything. They're like, I don't know where that's from.
It could be a lot. Yeah, exactly. Very open. So you went to drama school in London, right?
I did, yes.
And at what point do you make the move over here?
To be honest, I made the move to Los Angeles before this, and my God, I hated LA. It's not a great place if you're an actor, because everyone in LA is an actor. So everything you do is sort of networking, including the people I was hanging around with. They were like, "We should go for breakfast in this place," and they're like, it does good breakfast, and they're like, "No, but it's where like some influential producer has breakfast," and you're like. And suppose we end up sitting at a table next to an influential producer. Will that get us a job?
Accidentally drop the salt or something.
It's madness, but that's how actors from LA think. So you're like, I got to get out of here. So I did a TV show up in Vaughan, just north of Toronto, and then in Ottawa called No Easy Days, sort of for Amazon Prime. And then I stayed here 8 months doing that show. So I fell in love with the place. I like Ottawa. It's like it's like a village, but it's a city.
It's right in the middle.
It's right in the middle, and it doesn't have the traffic of any of these other places. And
it poses very well as a sort of metropolitan, larger city while keeping the charm of a smaller town.
Yeah, and it's I find it a nice place to live.
Well, and what you're saying about LA, I always have to imagine that a lot of people end up there who are coming from much smaller towns where they were the person, in their small town. Oh, he's going to make it. He's the best actor. And then you're all of a sudden in this pool of people that are in a similar line of work,
I think it's an old idea as well that, which I followed too, which is like you have to go to Hollywood. Sort of at a certain point, you've done so many movies and stuff like that, and they go, well, you got to try your hand in Hollywood, see if you can make it over there. You can do local stuff, as I did in London for many years, and then you fall into that trap. But actually, really, you don't need to do that anymore. The world is a lot smaller because of the internet and things than it used to be. So actually, you could be Jimmy Nobody from somewhere, and you could still make a Hollywood A-list star without setting foot in LA, really.
Well, there's always how much you hate or enjoy traveling is going to be a big part of it as well if you don't want to live in LA, because there are going to be times where I would imagine a lot of shoots are in New York or just other cities.
A lot of stuff I think is arranged out of those places, like all the deals are signed in LA, all the agents are there and everything like that. But I've only shot I've shot a bunch of movies. I've shot 2 in Los Angeles, but the rest of them, even though they're all signed out of Los Angeles, are in everywhere. Like you say, you have to love traveling.
Atlanta's a big one in the States for filming, isn't it?
They got a big tax break there, so they love Atlanta.
Oh, I always wonder, yeah. Or Georgia you see as well. Or Atlanta is Georgia, rather, yeah. But Marvel movies and I know The Walking Dead.
Yeah, huge tax breaks in those places, so they all gravitate towards there. Like The Walking Dead, I think, is what sort of stimulated all that, actually.
Interesting. Yeah, because you always see the Georgia peach at the end of the credits.
Yeah. Lots of stuff is shot out there. Atlanta's great. We shot a movie there last year for that exact reason. Also, Atlanta never shut during COVID.
Oh. So,
like, Hollywood would always be worried about, we don't want shutdowns and stuff like that. Atlanta was always able to say, we never closed down, which they didn't, ever.
Wow.
When I was there, it was in the height of COVID, and you could go to a bar, no masks on, and the bar was full and packed with people. It was actually really worrying.
Did you end up catching COVID at all?
No, but I had to immediately leave the bar that we were in. A friend of mine took me there, and I was like, I gotta go, man. I can't be here. I didn't think I was that afraid of COVID till I was there, and I was like, how open, and people were kind of like, our numbers are no worse or better than anywhere else, and you're like, because you're not testing. They had that thing of like nobody went to get tests, because they just didn't care, so their numbers it was hard to know what their actual numbers were. But Atlanta's a great place to be though, film wise, for sure.
Well, let's go back a little earlier in your career then, and talk about some of the first acting jobs you had, because I did go through the IMDb, and you had a lot to go through there. But the very first thing I saw was a role in Perfect Strangers, which I was not familiar with, but it seems to be a well-received show.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, for me, it was my one line of, I was like a kitchen cook in it.
Yeah, I've got that here.
It was one line, and I mean one line. But to me, it was like that was the biggest thing ever at the time.
Transformative,
yeah. It was more about making that jump between screen and theatre. So in London, you tend to start doing a lot of theatre. Actually, when you go to drama school, it isn't film school, so they're not teaching you for performing on screen. They're teaching you for theatre. They're only teaching you for theatre,
a live audience as opposed to camera.
Yeah. So, and they don't, as far as I'm aware, that's still the sort of system today. But they train you that way, and then if you're lucky, you get to make the leap, and if you don't, you don't.
Well, I wanted to ask you, based on that, it sounds like you were about 21 years old when you did that one-liner. So I wanted to ask what 21-year-old Simon would think of your accomplishments to date.
Oh, God. Yeah. Do you know what? I'm very, very lucky because I don't do another job. Lots of people do acting on the weekend or when they can, or around being a waiter or something, very admirable that they put double the amount of effort I do in. And I've been very lucky for the last decade to just do that, whereas before I had to sort of balance jobs between.
Yeah, that's very impressive.
So that's, to me, that's that was the thing I wanted to be when I was young. I was like, I wanted to just be an actor. I just lived like that, and hopefully get enough work to sustain that. And it took a while. But
it's always impressive, because like you said, there's a sort of a myriad of different levels to acting or comedy as well, as far as investment that people will put into it. And I'm always impressed when I interview or just meet someone who's either an actor or a performer of any kind who can make a living doing that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of sacrifice involved in it. Like all my friends were, married. I'm 41, and all my friends were married and had kids and stuff like that. And I missed that a little bit, sort of, because I was doing this, and it was like, well, nothing grows in the shade, right? So I would have relationships, but then you'd have to leave for 2 months doing them. And it kills all those things, sort of. So people go, oh, you're lucky you got to, and you're like, yeah, it comes with a certain cost. And I'm very lucky I got to travel the world, but I did it on my own.
So before the pod, you said you had a son, though, right? So you
now, sort of. Sorry, which he's 18 months. Like he's now. Like
he's very young.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, he shouts a lot. But up until then, I'd missed a lot of that. So I sort of feel like I'm playing catch up now, actually.
Yeah, well, I mean, newborns are exhausting. Even when my kids, my oldest two, I was 23 and 25 when I had them. So I had that energy reserve that someone in their 20s has,
Yeah, I'm not able for it. So.
No. Well, I mean, my youngest I had when I was, she had him, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He came into the world when I was 33 or something. And that decade of difference, I very much felt with the newborn stage.
Yeah, it's...
so I can only imagine 41.
Yeah, but also, like, I'm only used to looking after myself. You know what I mean? Sort of, and that was so. It's a bit of a shock, sort of in that sense of this thing that doesn't care that you're on the phone or you're, talking to just like, no, feed me now.
We actually have the same agent, so I wanted to give a shout out to Lisa Muser.
Yes,
you, I'm sure, have been a much more successful client of hers than I am. But thanks for sticking with me, Lisa. She's given me plenty of good opportunities, but this is like we were talking about the investment level. I'm often busy doing the show and the kids and comedy, and so if she sends me on audition, I generally try, but sometimes I can't fit it in, or I'm just not as seasoned and trained when it comes to acting. But to
be honest, I find a lot of that stuff is about sort of connections with people as well, sort of, and you've either, people have other priorities, obviously. Even the people that are making the movies have other priorities. So unless you hit it like square in the middle first time, you tend to miss the mark.
Yeah.
And 90% of auditions are that. People are not quite what they're looking for, and they don't have the producer or the director doesn't have the investment to try and get to know you a bit better because time is short for them too, so I always think, and you have to be exactly what they want, sort of, because there's so much options for them out there.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've only really ever been in a couple of things. Speaking of kitchen cook, the only thing I'm credited on IMDb was a character that was named Lemon Hands, just because I was a barkeep cutting lemons, and that's, anyways. But I came into it in an interesting time because I did one acting thing where I was like a guitar player in a band, and that it was a very last minute something that went up on Facebook. Hey, we're looking for musicians. And it was a sweet experience. I made a good paycheck, and we were considered skilled extras or whatever it is. But after that, I didn't do it for a bit, and then I started thinking, all right, I'm going to try and get an agent, maybe partially for the show, but also just to land more opportunities. And that came at the same time as COVID. So I've never done like in-person auditions. I've only done self-tapes.
Yeah, the world has gone like that recently. There was...
Do you have a preference personally?
Yeah. Oh, I prefer the self-tapes actually because the self-tapes give you a chance. If you mess it up, you can start again. You're in the room with someone, you can't mess it up. Well, you can, and then they
gives you a chance to review.
But it doesn't give. However, you've lost the personal connection, so you can be talking to the guy for 5-10 minutes beforehand, and the guy can like you and go, "Yeah, I'm going to be able to do the movie with this guy."
Yeah,
which you don't have with the self-tape. But usually the bigger profile stuff, they can talk to you and they can like you, and then they tape you anyway, and then they send that tape on to the other producers who aren't in the room, sort of. So you end up in the same scenario, except you're not able to do a take two, sort of thing.
Interesting.
So it's a funny thing. But COVID, it's funny. I had the exact opposite experience of COVID because I was trying to get more American work. Unsuccessfully in the last few years, and then COVID happened, and England shut down, and obviously a lot of the borders and travel became impossible everywhere. And if they wanted a British actor with a beard, then they had to find one that was already here,
source it domestically.
And then I managed to get so much work in the last 2 years. The Bruce Willis movies, the Mel Gibson things, all of my stuff that I got in COVID, and then we shot it in Puerto Rico, which is one of those places that again never shut down. So because it was a sort of and a big tax break, and once I got one of them, I got 4 of them. And I was like, brilliant. So
not having to fake an accent is huge.
No, they sort of culled out my competition because they couldn't get a British actor out of London. So if they wanted one, they had to find one that was already here.
Wow, that's pretty lucky.
I was very lucky. So I was just in the right place, right time. But then people say, "Oh, that was very lucky," and you're like, "Well, I've also been doing it for 20 years."
Exactly.
I was like, I've been in the right place, right time, probably for about 10 years, but not. Things keep passing you by because they do, and then eventually, people go, "That guy's always hanging around. Give him the job." He's been here enough. He's been in the waiting room long enough. Give him something.
And how do you fare when you have to take on doing like an American accent or?
Oh, do you know what? I've taught myself out of these jobs because I have this thing of like, if you want, and one of my favorite things to do is improvise. Sorry, I should say that to start with. And which is harder to do in an accent that isn't your own, sort of. And I really don't. I enjoy working with directors that allow you a bit of that leeway and room,
ad-libbing and stuff.
And I kind of enjoy that a bit more. So whenever they say, "Can you do an American accent?" The answer is, if you want an American, just get an American. Sort of. Honestly, and I would talk myself out of jobs like that because. Really, what would happen is I could do it, and I'd have to concentrate pretty hard. But there's some sort of disparity, unless you're one of those really top actors, which isn't me, that can do it flawlessly. I spend a lot of time concentrating on the accent, and then you lose something in what you're doing because you're working so hard to think
something
of the
else
accent.
suffers.
Something else, and it's sort of subconscious. You don't really notice it, obviously, but I would notice it. And the only time we've managed to successfully do that is I did do a film here in Canada. Where they had me and another British guy play two people from like Alabama.
Was this Butchers?
This is Butchers.
I just watched this last night. So
right, okay. So we did the accent for that, and I don't. You tell me. I don't.
No, it was very good. Yeah, very convincing.
And we managed to improvise in it. But my scene partner, who was British as well, so we were two brothers, both playing these sort of Southern drawl Alabama sort of Deliverance type characters.
Hills Have Eyes.
But like that. We did manage to improvise a bit on that one, but then we had each other. So we were sort of checking the accent with each other. So, but that was an unusual scenario. So I wouldn't opt to do that again if I could avoid it.
I always find it actually more interesting to hear, like as opposed to hearing a North American person putting on a British accent. I always find it funny to hear like Lucy Lawless or somebody become Xena. I don't know why, but it's always tickled my ear a bit.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Traditionally speaking, we speak in just like an octave lower than anybody from North America. So I think we find it easier to do the American accent than the American would have found it to do the British. It's hard to drop their voice an octave lower without sounding forced.
Yeah, I would have never thought of octaves coming into it at all.
It does. We have a lower register of the way we talk. Our voices just across the board are a bit more bassier.
You certainly, I can hear it.
In British actors generally, if you listen to them, they do speak slightly down here, and Americans are slightly just one octave up, and it's so it's harder for them. Like physically, it's actually harder for them to do it. But if they do it, obviously the people that can do it and do it very well. But it's not easy, but it is easier the other way around. If you think about it, going up an octave is definitely easier than going down one.
Yeah.
Like just generally.
Well, some people don't even have the ability to go lower.
Oh, well, no. And those are terrible actors who are just like, just talk in one tone all the time. And you see, I see these people and I'm like, God, that guy's voice that drives me crazy. Like just one tone and no inflection or no variation on it at all.
Robotic sort of.
Yeah. But I see these people, I wonder how they get on some shows, like who they're sleeping with. That would be my big question.
Can you imagine sleeping with them? Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I'm having such a good time. You were speaking of improv, though, which is a perfect segue into the latest film that you have out, which is Survive the Game, because I read that you had improv a lot or most of the lines in your scenes with Bruce Willis.
Do you know what? I wish that was my choice. As we were doing the movie, I was there before him, obviously, because he wasn't there all the whole time. And I was in like ad-libbing and stuff like that, which everybody seemed to like until the day he came in and they were like, "Hey, Simon, I know you like to improvise, but today, stick to the script."
Interesting.
It's contractual, right, with him, and he's, don't.
He's a no-nonsense kind of
He's
guy.
a no-nonsense. You just stick to the thing.
This is what I was going to ask you. Is it, I would imagine acting in anything with freaking John McClane is going to be intimidating, but when...
It was, but then he turned up and he was the nicest person in the world, and then he also started saying whatever the hell he liked, sort of. And then I had three people warn me, two producers and the director going, "Hey man, don't change anything." And then as soon as he sort of pulled the grenade pin on improvising, they were like, "Oh, you can say whatever you want." Yeah, so as long as he improvises, I was like, "You can do it." And I was like, which they hadn't said to me before.
Interesting.
And I was like, and then obviously they didn't seem to know that he was going to do that, sort of. So, and as soon as he did that, we had these whole sequences that were just completely unscripted. And for me, I was like, I'm improvising with John McClane. I was like,
so crazy.
Teenage Simon is giving adult Simon a high five right now.
Yes, 100%. Oh man, that's really, really cool. People can see that on Amazon Prime, I should say.
They probably, yeah.
I think you have to rent that one. I was looking last night. I ended up watching Butchers because I'm a cheap bastard.
But believe it or not, I don't actually watch. I don't make my family like sit down and say, we're all going to watch Simon this evening.
Do you revisit your own performances just for
couldn't
growing
stand
purpose? No, eh?
doing any of that. No. I have to kind of leave it all out. Even when we're on set, they're like, sometimes with the camera going wants to show you what you just did.
Dailies or whatever, yeah.
And you're like, nah, honestly, man, you be happy. As long as the director's happy, I'll do. Otherwise, you start doing this thing of going, what am I doing with my face or my hands, or I look fat in that shot. I don't like. Do you know? And you start thinking of all the other things, and you're like, it really doesn't matter. I was like, as long as they're happy, you should be happy.
Well, it leads me into a question I want to ask you about. If you have any sort of techniques that you like to use to deal with criticisms of your performances, if you see them.
I always tell people to look up their favorite movie, whatever. Mine is Leon. I don't know if you see The Professional here, it might be called. The Luc Besson movie.
With John Reno, right?
Yeah, and Natalie Portman.
When she was very young, yeah.
I don't know if it's her first movie, but certainly one of her first.
Yeah, I'd say so.
My favorite movie, I consider it sort of flawless, is like just as things go. And if you look at it online, you go and you Amazon, IMDb, wherever you like to do these things, and read the reviews of the movie, you will find somebody that picks flaws in it. And to my mind, unbelievably, sort of. And that's how I deal with criticism, is like, you will always find people that absolutely hate what you do.
Yeah.
But as long as somebody somewhere is still writing you a check to keep doing it.
Well, that's the thing, yeah.
Then just keep doing
Laugh
it.
all the way to the bank.
But the price of that is, by the way, ignoring good reviews.
Yeah, you kind of got to shut it all out.
Kind of, if you just, you're like, you did really good on that. You have to kind of take that as much as you would take someone saying you were terrible in that. Sort of, and you have to, if you brush both of them out and go, I know what I'm doing, and if people buy it, then people buy it, and if they don't, then they don't.
That's a really healthy approach.
Yeah, it keeps you saying. Otherwise, I know actors that worry constantly about what other people think of them, and you're like, it makes you less confident in you, sort of. And also these are people though that would try to be someone they're not. I was like, whenever you're doing a role, try to just be sort of a version of you. It doesn't have to be exactly you. Obviously, you're not a serial killer in real life, but if you bring something of you to it, it'll feel more three-dimensional than
anchor yourself to
and then it feels, and then people go, there's something comes across as real there in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, I've been pretty lucky with YouTube comments on this show that have been resoundingly positive for the most part, but every once in a while you get one with a nugget of truth that really resonates, where you're like, he's calling me on, I did cut that guy off too much, or whatever it may be. And those are the ones I find they just cut right through you.
I mean, if you can take those, because sometimes there's just hateful comments for like
trolling or whatever.
Yeah, and then there's no point in those. But every now and then, I suppose somebody could have a criticism which you could be like, fair play.
It's not malicious, but just
no. And if you're able to use that and go, you know what, I'll take that and try and improve it. I think it's all about the person. It's all about the way you absorb it. People can say that, and you're like, but it's like somebody once told me, I was like in an audition. They're like, I love you for it, man, but you're just not tall enough. And you're like, okay, and you're like, you have to leave that one there. I was like, I'm not sure how to deal with that. As like
platforms,
do you know what I mean? You're like, I am this height, so there's nothing, and I don't feel bad about that one because you're like, well, okay, that wasn't for me anyway.
Inevitable, you can't get that one, yeah. I was gonna say, with my limited successes in the acting world, one thing that happened to me recently, I think the only time I've ever actually gotten paid doing any of this through Lisa, of no fault of hers. But she booked me recently for it was like a Heritage Moment Canadian thing with a bunch of soldiers. I think it was basically a glorified extra, but I was happy to do it. And I drove out to Quebec, and the stipulation was I also had to shave my beard, which I did not take lightly. I enjoy my facial hair. I don't like being baby-ass clean-shaven. No. So I did it, drove all the way out there. I had been very clear about what time I'd be able to get there, and they're like, no, come, we've got lots of work, And I got there within 5 minutes. They're like, what we needed you for, we did it at like 7:30. And so I hounded them, and they ended up paying me, and I was the only one who ended up getting paid because squeaky wheel gets the grease or whatever. But I wanted to know if you, sorry, this is a long-winded question, but if you have ever shaved your beard for a role, and if not, or either way, I wanted to know if there was anything you wouldn't do for a role, nudity, etc.
I haven't shaved my beard for a role because I'd end up single, number one, probably, if I did that. And but number two, when I was young, I didn't have a beard. So like when I was 21, obviously not when I was young, obviously. But when I was 21, I had a sort of a bit more clean shaven approach, and I was trying to be the sort of square jawed hero roles. That's actually what I was going for, and I got a couple of these jobs. And what happened was I got them, and they just didn't. They did okay, the movies, but they didn't sit right, sort of. And then I got a role as a sort of sarcastic bad guy, and I grew my beard. And then my agent at the time was like, "That's your thing." Sort of, it felt a bit more comfortable. I was like, because I was like, yeah, I'm not the hero guy, actually, So I'm number one, I'm not 6 foot, square jawed, six pack. That wasn't me anyway. Now you could hustle yourself into that position, sort of if as being an actor, you could do a good audition and you would get that role. But something is there's sort of a disparity. You don't really suit it is the thing, I always remember seeing Gangster New York. Leonardo DiCaprio is a great actor, okay, but he's not a tough guy. And in Gangs of New York, they have him at the center of these incredibly giant, masculine, tough guys all around him, sort of convincing. And he's still, Leonardo DiCaprio, he's still like a pretty face.
A pretty boy, yeah.
And he feels out of place. So they changed the script to make him a lover a bit more, he's sort of, because he's not a fighter, not in that scenario. So you're like, even though the film is really good and I really enjoyed it, he feels slightly out of place in it, because you're like, it feels like everyone else was just brought in because they were decent actors, and then they plonked Leonardo DiCaprio in it to make it possible financially. It was like, he's a superstar, so let's put him in it. And you're like, yes, but he didn't seem to fit that environment very well, sort of. And in latter years, he's grown into, I think, picked his roles a bit better, sort of knowing that that's true. And I think as an actor, whenever you go for something, you should do the same. You should go, if I could get this job, would I do a good job in it? Because actually getting it is one thing, and then if it's disparaging to you or it doesn't really help you, then why bother doing it? You need to kind of push it along. And if you can't, I don't think if you're going to get a role and you can't do it very well, then you shouldn't do it probably. Even if they go, yeah, we'd like you to do this. And you're like,
I guess it depends on the paycheck sometimes.
So, and obviously, paychecks overweigh those things. They're like, because sometimes they think, I've done that before, and they think you're negotiating. And they're like, okay, here's double. We need you next week. And you're like, okay, tell them I'll be there. Yeah.
That's hilarious. You were saying you were clean shaven back when you were in your early 20s, but I would argue, though, that was also more in style back then. Like with Game of Thrones and that sort of era, I feel like the last 10 years, beards have really had a resurgence in. Yeah. Almost every guy has a beard these days.
Do you know what it is? I don't think it's you're right on the beards thing, but what I think it is that if you go back 20, 30 years, what people considered movie stars and film actors were actually clean shaven, 6 foot tall, ripped, and very good looking. And then what happened in the 90s was a lot of like what I call realistic television came about, where people were like, actually superstars became very average looking, sort of. You had the rise of people like Ricky Gervais or even Gary Oldman and people like that, very good actors and comedians and stuff like that.
But they're not like Ryan Reynolds.
But they weren't these impossibly good looking Harrison Ford type. That model had kind of been broken a little bit, and so people wanted, because people find it hard to empathize, I think, with Leonardo DiCaprio or Brad Pitt, and you're like, because even at their worst they look incredible, sort of. Whereas they feel a bit more comfortable if you want them to identify with somebody else, so they go, well, actually he looks a bit like me. And I think there was because there were so many films being made and sort of entertainment exploded a bit, there was room for that all of a sudden, and that's what gave it rise. So people actually wanted average looking people. Because
it's more relatable.
It's more relatable, and they could still be amazing actors, which sort of, it wasn't a barrier. They didn't have to be the sort of Cary Grant or Marlon Brandos anymore. That was an old idea.
Which is fantastic, because to think of all the amazing actors that might have been falling to the wayside during that earlier era,
Well, there was you must know Bob Hoskins, obviously.
Yes.
Bob Hoskins had a thing of saying, because he never fit the mold, right? Him and Danny DeVito were good friends, and which is ridiculous. You could kind of see that, that might have been true. And Bob Hoskins he goes, they always wanted me. And he goes, because I was like, something a bit different, because they'd have all these things, and then him. And he goes, but I'd give them, I could do the job, but I couldn't be the main guy, but I could be the, the support guy. And he got a lot of jobs because he looked different. Nowadays, I think I would argue that it's full of Bob Hoskins.
It's much more mainstream to be.
To be in that sort of space now.
I always think of him from Hook. Was the first thing I ever saw him in when I was a kid.
Yeah, Hook.
Smee, he was like Captain Hook's little right-hand man.
That's right, he was, yeah.
And he was in that Jet Li movie too, right? Where Jet Li was like an animal of a man that they kept in a cage.
And he kept him on a collar, didn't he?
Yeah, and he was like the owner, I suppose.
Yeah.
Interesting. I usually throw it to my dad sometimes to see if he's got a question going on. So do you have something this time around? Switch to his mic.
Yeah. I guess the question that I would have for you, Simon, is why do you like acting? What is it about acting? I mean, was it, you obviously were into it from an early age, but why?
My mother was an actress and a failed actress, and she's now a theatre director. But she never really got her shot at doing it. She never, like my father, never really supported her doing it. Sort of, that was the sort of decision, and she allowed that. So I think it's from an early age, she sort of encouraged me to do something, and obviously at an early age, my father discouraged it. So it was that sort of I don't know. I wasn't a kid you could say no to very easily, and I had this absolute unwillingness to do a normal job, and I think that's the only way actually you can be an actor. If you can imagine yourself doing anything else, like being a chef, being a cop, being a lawyer, if you can imagine yourself doing absolutely anything else, you should go ahead and do that. If you can't imagine yourself doing anything else, then it's easy to find the energy to get rejected a lot and keep going until people accept you. That doesn't always work for people, because obviously you can still love acting and not really get any success at it. But I don't know if there's any value in spending your life doing something you don't like, even if you're not successful.
And a follow-up, if I could, you've already sort of alluded to, not being the chiseled chin leading man sort of type. But when you started doing this full time and this was your thing, was there the hope in the back of your head that maybe one day you were going to be like an A-list type actor, or were you already thinking, I just want to be a journeyman actor and a good character actor, or what have you?
Maybe it's the British training in us, but when a lot of kids today, when they see all these shows like the X Factor and stuff like this, they want to be famous. When I was at school, everybody wanted to be a great actor, and they would have like, I want to be a Michael Caine or a Gary Oldman, and they would aspire to be that type of actor. And I think for me, that's definitely the I'd love to be a character actor. I don't really ever want to be Leonardo DiCaprio or Brad Pitt. I don't see myself in those positions. But I'd love to be the guy people can't quite name, going, yeah, that guy, yeah. But they've seen you in lots of places.
The guy who's in everything, yeah.
They don't know who you are, but as soon as someone shows them a picture, they go, oh, yeah, that guy, yeah. I know, I saw him. What from? I don't know. Like lots of things. Nothing. I don't know. I can't remember.
But when I see those guys, I do usually say, but he's good.
Yes, they often, it's often a face, and they go, yeah, he's, and they'll watch it just based on that being it. But it's not what I would call a name, like Dustin Hoffman, Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, those are names, and you sort of, I don't, but there are plenty of actors that we all know that are very good, who maybe don't roll off the tongue so easily, and you're like, oh no, I would be happy existing as one of those, because they still have plenty of success. They're very respected and revered in the industry.
I would imagine it's a much more palatable version of fame too, to be somebody who gets steady work and has a niche fan group, like some sort of show everybody loves, but outside of that audience, you're not going to get harassed walking down the street or something like that,
Yeah, I mean, it must be actually difficult
to be in the pocket, just that perfect sort of zone of like, I'm making good money.
The sweet spot.
Yeah, I'm well connected, but I don't have, every average Joe harassing me every 5 seconds.
Yeah, I think that would be, and then, you can turn your hand to a lot of these, a lot of different things within entertainment. You can do theatre and you can do stuff like that. But these guys, other than that, it feels quite tough for them.
Well, I want to ask, I want to get into Butchers, which I watched last night, but also just horror stuff in general, and also the fact that you seem to be, from what I've gathered, cast often as a murderer, murderous Santa Claus in one instance, a criminal, these types of roles. So I wanted to know if there was maybe not a dream role, but a role very much outside of your wheelhouse that you're sort of pining for in the subconscious.
I love doing comedy. So I find comedy, because I like ad-libbing, right? Sort of, and ad-libbing lends itself to being funny. Obviously, you're thinking of, where stuff goes organically. But I made a couple of comedies and they've been, not successful. So they go, and it's not one person's fault or another. It's one of those things of like, comedies actually have to be either amazing or they're nothing. You don't find a lot of mid-range comedies, when people go, yeah, it was okay.
It's very forgettable though.
That's the problem. If it's forgettable, for whatever reason, it's not a success, sort of, and that's the problem with a comedy. A horror film can be forgettable and still be successful because they're like, it's going, it was worth a watch, sort of type thing. A comedy doesn't get that criticism. It's kind of like, it's either amazing or it's not, or it's very funny or it's not.
And comedies are generally sort of the movies that, at least in a lot of instances, they're created hoping to reach a lot of, like, a broad audience because, comedy is something we all experience from one time or another. We find something funny and hopefully everyone will like this. But horror, I think, has such a laneway where, like, there's so many people who just love horror and that's all they watch, and
the audience is very loyal in horror.
Yeah.
And so, but part of the problem with comedy is it has such generic appeal that it appeals to nobody specifically. And that's,
like,
and
this
so the
podcast.
audience isn't, there isn't a niche audience who go, you're going to like this.
Yeah.
Comedy, as you say, can be for anybody, and that's sort of what alienates it at that sales stage as well, because it also means it's for nobody.
Well, I joke, but that's very, very much something that I've experienced with doing this show. Is that early on, I thought, okay, if I make it a weed podcast or even a comedy podcast, we had tons of stand-up comedians on here, but I never wanted to limit to myself, even if it's at my own, detriment, just because I wanted to keep it open-ended, talk to anybody that I find interesting.
Yeah, I think that is the thing. You should keep open to any kind of thing. I keep getting horror work and those sort of type things because they like you in that. And if they like you, you as an actor, you're the subject of somebody else's whim anyway. So it's whatever they give you, whatever the audition comes up, whatever the project is. So it's always going to be for the same sort of thing. Like, I mean, I keep getting things and they go, look, this scene is you threatening a girl, and you're like, we're going to be okay. Don't worry. I got this.
Yeah, this is not my first rodeo.
Yeah. Don't. You need to be able to intimidate her, and I was like, we're going to be okay. Don't worry.
Well, that's a good segue into the movie Butchers, which I did watch last night, which is also on Amazon. People should check it out. I found the performances very disturbing in the best way, yours especially. Cinematography was something that really took me off guard, too. The shots they got in that movie were really nice. The colors were so vibrant, and I don't know. I'm not someone who normally notices that kind of thing, but that was something that stood out to me.
Yeah, the director, Adrian Langley, right from here, Ottawa.
Was it shot here?
It was shot in Merrickville, so very, very near here.
Yeah, that's a nice place.
He was a cinematographer by trade, I guess, and he's directing now, but this is one of his first big ones, I think. And he just knew what he was after visually, and he had enough confidence to. Actually, I'm going to tell you a story about this. When they first came to it, they were looking for one guy. They were like, "There's going to be one bad guy. He's this, big thing that threatened, And I was like, so I read it, and my suggestion was, I was like, I love the dialogue, and it's good fun and everything, but really, I don't feel good with that I would be able to trap 4 kids. Sort of. It feels. For me, I feel you're looking for the more Hills of Eyes, sort of 6'4" guy, And in the end, he wrote a second role and made it my brother, so that we would be able to do it two-handed, and which felt better for me anyway. Sort of, and I was like, good, because he does my brother does the heavy lifting and the violence, and I just do the threatening.
You were like the kingpin of the operation.
Sort of. I was the smarter of the two brothers.
Smarter,
yeah. I mean, I don't know if they were particularly smart, but anyway, the smarter.
And the third guy, he was a brother as well, or
that's right. They made all that.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, that's right. At the end of the movie,
and that was Nick Allen. I recognized him right away.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, Nick.
And shout out to Julie as well, because she was very popping on screen and a great actress.
Julie is fantastic.
Speaking of day jobs, she's a nurse, is she not? So that blows my mind.
Always impressed that people are able to do, and like, not just a job. Like, she's not like she's a waitress or something, like a nurse. Like actually on the front line doing stuff.
Yeah,
super impressed.
And killing it on the acting side of things as well.
She's very, very busy, which is a good place to be. Yeah.
This next question actually comes from my fiance Kelly. I very much want to know this as well, though. When you are embodying a character that is literally hacking limbs off of teenagers in a gruesome way, you got to watch this. Do you find that it weighs on your psyche at all post-project? Have you ever had any of it? I don't want to say take your work home with you, because that'd be limbs at this point.
No, people always say, I take this as a compliment, but they do the thing of like, right up until action, I'll be able to be normal with people, and then right on action, I can be something else, and then right on cut, I go back to just me. But it is, I sometimes get a complaint that it's not that easy for other people. So they like to get emotionally in the right place, and which is fair enough. But when it's something as ridiculous as Butchers, you're like, actually, this isn't really drama. This is so far out of reality that actually I find it's you're able to flick it on, flick it off.
But you as the killer, I feel like that might be easier to do than the victim.
Right, so the victims have to work up to this. They, sort of, and even when I'm the killer, I'm not emotionally, sort of, I'm actually very sarcastic as a killer, very casual. So actually, it helps me to talk to the person normally, rather than...
It made your character creepier, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That you were so, laissez-faire about murdering people.
And that was my thing with Adrian, the director. Was like, in the whole movie, I never wanted to touch anybody. I was like, I find that you can be very threatening without touching people. The minute you put your hand on someone, you've lost a bit of power. I was like, I don't need to touch you to threaten you, sort of.
It's shove a shotgun barrel down your throat.
Yeah, sort of. You will feel, under pressure, sort of.
Well, and you had the other boys doing the gruesome stuff anyway, so it's not like it wasn't present.
No.
There is one scene, again, spoilers, that, oh my God. I mean, I had a little bit of edibles last night, probably a bad idea. And then I proceeded to cook a big fish meal kit afterwards, and I'm largely a vegetarian, so watching you butcher these people and then having to, do all this, I don't know, maybe it makes me sound like a wuss or whatever, but... it was pretty dark stuff, and it definitely got under my skin. I'm not gonna lie, man.
I think that was his intent. So anyway, you're not gonna like these guys.
Oh, sorry. The scene I was talking about was when he has the two by the car and she runs off. And he's already sort of bashed the one guy. He's lying on the ground, but he doesn't want him to get away while he's off running for the girl. So he just cuts the back of his calf muscles so he won't be able to run anywhere.
Oh, his Achilles. The
Achilles tendon. Yeah, I just thought that was so dark and twisted.
Do you know what? That was day one of filming, and I remember Freddie doing that. He was the actor doing it, and he let out this guttural scream, we'd had some read-throughs, and obviously he didn't have a great deal of dialogue in the thing, so I was unsure of what he was going to be like, because it was hard with me. But then he did this thing, and I was like, Jesus Christ,
blood curdling.
It was hard to watch it being filmed. Never mind. And I was like, yeah, man, people are gonna, because he was dragging himself on the gravel to try and get away from this guy. So it was it was terrifying, actually.
It's funny when because watching this last night made me realize that I have fallen a long way from my teenage years of loving horror, as opposed to being just, I guess because I'm getting older, my own mortality is a little more staring back at me or whatever. But I've definitely learned that I can't digest it the same way that I used to.
This is the mistake people make as well. They think because I'm in horror a lot, they think they go, oh, you love horror, and I'm like, I'm in horror a lot. I was like, when I come home and watch something, it isn't, or 9 times out of 10, it is not horror. Sort of. I don't, because horror movies actually scare me. They still actually terrify me. I have that complete suspension of disbelief. I can watch a movie and when there's a bang, I'm properly. I jumped and I'm like, oh no, fuck, I need to watch a Family Guy or something. I need to, I need to chill out with something else. Yeah. This is too much. I can't watch it right before I go to bed. Even now.
Let me share a trick with you then. This is my personal method if I'm getting freaked out by a movie that I'm watching alone or something, is to remind myself of sort of the behind the scenes. Picture somebody, someone farting and causing a blooper or something like that, and then all of a sudden it sort of brings it back to the real world, and I can differentiate, from the fiction.
My technique is to plug my ears. I find that I can watch it, but it's the musical, the jump sound that kills me. So, but if I can watch it, but if I plug my ears, I can get through it.
The suspenseful score.
I know. Yeah. I shouldn't tell this as I've got this other persona on screen.
Well, I actually wanted that to be a bit of a question. If my blooper thing is my method, but if you had any favorite bloopers on any set you've been on, really funny moments that have gone down.
Oh. No, not massively. No, I haven't actually had any. Well, we have bloopers of people forgetting lines and stuff like that, but I've never had any huge blooper that was worthy of an anecdote.
Question.
No.
All right, fair. Well, we'll move it on then. I falsely assumed you were a big horror buff too, based on your persona on screen and a lot of the roles you've had. So I did prepare this question, which hopefully you'll you'll answer regardless, which is, who do you think are the top 3, or even just top 1 if you prefer, horror villains of all time?
I take that question as more of an actor's, because there are some terrifying performances, sort of people. I suppose as a top horror villain, I mean, I've got to.
That's why I give you top 3 if it's too hard to choose just one.
It is a little bit. I mean, I love. I did a movie with this guy, but Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger.
Yes.
You know, sort of like, as a child haunted
Iconic.
me, and then when I was younger, I did a movie with him, and he was still terrifying, and right there in the flesh. But he was able to switch it on, switch it off. So Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger is my number
He's
one.
probably on the Mount Rushmore of horror. Anyway.
He's got to be, right? I mean, but there are other. I mean, God, my God, there are so many talented people. I'm going to leave someone out here. No, Freddy Krueger is the top. No.
He's the top.
He's
yeah.
the top for me.
What do you think, Dad? What do you give it to?
I don't watch horror.
Well, you must have seen some horrors in your life. You know the main players. There's Krueger, obviously, but there's Jason Voorhees. We've got Chucky, Leatherface, Michael Myers.
Now, some of those you see are behind masks. So
Right.
I
True,
find
yeah.
it's where Robert Englund is obviously behind a bit of prosthetics anyway, but
It's still his character.
I feel you feel him a bit more than Leatherface or Michael Myers. Do you know what I mean?
Leatherface has someone else's face.
Yes, indeed. Also does Michael Myers. He has
Michael
Well, I
Myers.
mean, literally another person's face in the case of
Michael
Leatherface.
Myers literally has what's his name?
Oh, it's William Shatner.
William Shatner's face.
But you're talking about the mask. I mean, the character, fictionally speaking, of Michael Myers is actually sporting the flesh of a victim. You know?
Yes.
Actually, he's the one that made me uncomfortable.
What? Who?
Michael
Leatherface?
Myers.
Oh, Michael Myers.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's this sort of dehumaning thing from him. You know,
stalking slowly
and
and-
you don't know what he wants. You know what I mean?
That,
So-
that's I think part of it for me. Like
Ominous.
I go like, well, what's with this guy? Like Jesus, you know?
Yeah, because as soon as you think someone's just mental, it ups the scared level because you're like, oh, well, they have no reservations about anything. They're on a
Plus, you
different-
can't kill him. Like what the hell?
Yeah,
He's a human being, is he not? But no,
he is. Yeah, he escaped a mental institute after killing his family, I believe.
But I mean, he got like he should have been dead 100 times
he got
over.
shot a couple times.
Yeah.
Yes, there is this sort of superhuman element
Yeah,
to him,
yeah.
isn't there, as well?
So then your mind can go, well, maybe he's powered by the power of hell or something like
It,
that.
it depends on the version because I know Rob Zombie did some remakes, and I think he made 2 of them that were linear. They followed each other, but in the second one, he was seeing the ghost of his dead mom or something. So I don't know if that means he's supernaturally powered, but they were trying to imply maybe some spiritual forces were,
I don't know if you guys have ever seen a movie, an Australian movie called Wolf Creek.
No.
Oh, terrifying performance.
Werewolf?
No, it's not. No, sorry, it's not about
no.
werewolves at all.
Oh, okay.
It's about a guy that kidnaps a bunch of teenagers. It's sort of similar to Butcher's thing. And the guy, I don't know the actor's name, but he was absolutely terrifying. It's about a 10-year-old movie, Australian movie, but and it was based. Sorry, what's more terrifying is it's based on a true story that they never.
Don't you hate that?
Yeah, and they never caught the guy, which is like, sort of, it was just an
Even worse,
unexplained murder. Sorry, it was an unexplained murder of a bunch of people and one person survived. And then there was this whole big Australian thing about, oh no, the person that survived was somehow in on it, or there was something foul play there, or,
Sinister. Yeah.
But it was a lone survivor, which is obviously a dangerous thing.
I have learned, though, as someone who did used to watch a lot of horror movies, that most of the time the based on true events is as loosely based as you can imagine.
Yes,
you know?
as in there were two people that once didn't like each other. And
Well,
that's
like,
where the story
Change,
stops.
yeah, exactly. It's like
Yeah.
there were 2 guys once,
Yeah.
But Leatherface was an example of that. He was very loosely based on Ed Gein, from what I've heard, and sort of the really disgusting shit they found in his apartment, like
But it's
skin
spawned its
lamps
own.
and it became sort of like that's loosely based, but. Tying into all this, and you talking about not touching anyone and how that was scarier. Have you ever seen The Strangers?
Yes, yeah.
That movie scared the shit out of me.
Yeah, and again, a lot of that, remember, was them not in contact with them. But what you were freaked out more is in the first half of the movie was just their presence, sort of. It was very...
And being manipulated with so openly
Yeah.
and being powerless, The phone's missing all of a sudden. And
Yeah.
then some creepy girl's knocking on the door, but she doesn't do anything. She just freaks the shit out of you, And
It's very disconcerting.
have you seen that film, Dad? The Strangers. It's got Liv Tyler and Scott Speedman, I believe, are the 2 leads. And also
There's another one as well.
Glenn Howerton from Always Sunny in Philadelphia before he was on that show.
There's a sequel to it, as well.
That I haven't seen. I assumed it was going to be one of those,
Yeah, I think
sequels. But the first film, very, very different, very scary. The first half an hour, I hope I haven't talked about this on the podcast before, but the first half an hour is like this romantic situation where he's just proposed to her and she said no, but they're still stuck at this cottage for the weekend or whatever. And
I think it's good. They spend too much time doing that.
Yeah.
But then you think, oh, this is going to be a different movie.
they make you comfortable.
And they do. They spend a lot of time making you comfortable, and then you go, oh, it's going to be this type of movie. And then it slowly like
as slowly as you can imagine, but in the best way.
But it sort of winds you pretty tight then by the end, you know. So rather than giving you that opening kill, you know, some movies go straight into a kill, and you're like, oh Jesus,
it's gonna be a gore fest.
and you're like, okay, but then you're sort of you're bracing yourself for the next one, whereas that one sort of drew you in very slowly, very deliberately, and then, you know, and then started to play with you, like they played with the, you know, the couple in the
they instilled this feeling of helplessness that just grew and grew and grew, and he goes to get smokes because he's pissed about their relationship being on the ledge, and she starts to notice the weird shit, and at the one point when she puts the record on, I don't even think she's freaked out at this point, and you see the man just kind of come in the frame
and then go out again,
and then he just pieces out again. He's just, you know, they're taking their time, and it's so much creepier. But again, that was an example of a based on true events, which is I've looked into it and I can't find pretty much anything.
No, because if it was based on true events, both those people died.
Yeah, well, I mean, it could have happened, though.
Who's recounting the story of how?
Oh, well, I mean, they frame that movie that there's these little Mormon kids. The movie starts off with post-murder, these two kids finding the crime scene, so to speak. And the end of the movie is this murderous couple and their kid, I guess. Yeah. Then they get away, you know. And they wear masks the entire time, which is also kind of unnerving because they're not scary.
Well, it's dehumanizing, isn't it? One of the things I find scary is sometimes when we look at someone as a villain as well, what makes the James Bond villain pretty safe is he wants to take over the world, and you're given sort of steps on how he wants to do it. He might be crazy, but he has a goal. A very scary villain is one that doesn't really have an agenda.
It's an anarchist.
Because they can't be negotiated with, they can't be bartered with, you know, and that makes them more, because you don't know what they want.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what they want, then you don't know why they're doing it, and that might be so scary. And that was one of the wisest lines I think Adrian included in Butchers earlier on. One of the kids was begging me to answer, like, why are you doing this? And you're like, and we just don't answer it. We're like, because it needs to be done. And you're like, that's his answer to the question. You're like, what? And people hopefully are thinking, geez, what needs to be done? You know, why do they think that? What? That doesn't answer anything. Yeah. You know, but that's what makes it scary, I think.
I thought a really unnerving part of that was, again, this is massive spoiler, so I've told you to go watch it, but I'm going to keep digging into the plot because it was interesting. But your brother in that has sort of been, I don't want to say nurturing, but keeping this one victim, you know, alive. And when she kills herself ultimately because she's existing in this pure hell, he just loses it. But it shows he still has some weird fucking emotional side because he starts crying, and it's just like, man, what parents did these people have?
Yes, well, we start a movie burying
the mom,
burying the mother, yeah.
I would love to know what character that was. You know, I'd love to see her.
Indeed, I think they're going to make another one of those, by the way.
A prequel, maybe, or
prequel, yeah. Something not with me and Michael, but with another story connected to this story. I think.
Very cool.
So I'm keen to see it. I'm actually very keen to see it as a fan. So but yeah, the idea. I should tell you the idea behind it actually, because I know what it was. Is that what these guys wanted was family. So when they kidnapped these girls, they were trying to get them pregnant or keep them prisoner and get them pregnant to raise their own family.
As ultimately one of them did.
Yeah.
Or you did, I suppose it was you.
I think it was me and not Michael, yeah.
The other guy thought it was him. But
but he was simple.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's one of those things, one of the characters that might believe this girl somehow got pregnant without her touching her.
Yeah, exactly. So, he was very much, cannot remember the character's name, but is it Mice and Men? Is that the...
Yeah, he's Lenny.
Lenny, there you go. Yeah. George and Lenny. Yeah, I read that in school ages ago.
He's the big dumb one, doesn't quite get it.
And he breaks the girl's neck from dancing with her the wrong way a little too hard.
He's that guy, isn't he? He crushes something with his strength, but, you know, he's a gentle giant, really, sort of, except...
That's been exploited.
Yeah. Sort of, he's been manipulated to sort of do bidding, sort of type thing. So, yeah, and that's the idea behind it, is that they want a family, and that's why when mom dies at the beginning, they're trying to rebuild that. That's the goal, basically. I mean, obviously, it's very messed up, but that's the idea.
Up. Yeah, it was. It really reminded me of a lot of films that I saw when I was big into horror in the early 2000s, and I don't know why. It just really did. The cinematography reminded me of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre with Jessica Biel from like 2003 or 5. There was a lot of these really dark, shadowy, creepy shots that still somehow, to be able to capture something dark and shadowy, but still have it be detailed, if that makes sense. I don't know.
Do you know what one of the things was as well? It's funny because people describe that a lot like that. The entire movie is in the daytime.
Okay.
And yet, when you think of it, you think it's nighttime. And I was like, no, even in the barn, you know it's daytime. Like the barn has like you can see the sun outside.
That's
so
true.
everything that happens in the daytime. There's no nighttime at all in that whole movie. That's what. And Adrian, the director, it was something he deliberately wanted. He goes, he's trying to make daytime scary. Nighttime is often scary in a horror movie because it's nighttime. You know that there's no safety at night. But actually, he made this a bit Hills of Eyes that actually daytime isn't safe either. You know, sort of daytime can be very dangerous. And
But
so
it's
the whole
cool
movie
too.
is daytime.
It's extra misleading because the daytime, when you're trying to be with the protagonist and put yourself in their shoes, the daytime seems to imply this false sense of, oh, maybe we can make it.
Yeah, it gives you,
You know.
that. Well, they always have, don't they, in these horror movies, they have nighttime. And then as soon as the scene cuts to a daytime, you're like, okay, whew, you know,
Yes,
there's
you can breathe
a
for a
breath,
moment.
the breath from it as they build up to the nighttime. You have no idea why these people stick around for nighttime. You know, again, we'll just wait for darkness to fall and then we'll head out first thing in the morning. And you're like, no, leave now.
Oh, man. I want to talk about the crazy Santa Claus role that you did. This seemed to have two different names, this film, right? The Nights Before Christmas and what was the other one?
Once Upon a Time at Christmas?
Once Upon a Time at Christmas.
These are two different movies.
Oh, they are?
Yeah,
Okay.
one's a sequel. Yeah, so Once Upon a Time at Christmas is the first one and Nights Before Christmas
Oh, my mistake.
is the second one. But they both follow the same narrative thread of a crazy Mr. and Mrs. Claus going around killing people.
Well, the main question
different
I
reasons.
wanted to ask you about was that I had read that most of your lines had to be overdubbed afterwards because you had a grill in your teeth, and it was
I had this thing fitted in when we were doing prep, and they were like, you need to practice with it in, like it's like any one of these things, practice with it in. And I was like, yeah, of course I will. And obviously I didn't. So when we got to set and I'm trying to kill people and sound very, threatening, I'm like, kind of, Merry Christmas, everybody, sort of with this constant lip. And then, the director's like, we're going to have to dub.
It's not gonna work,
It was like the visual is working, but
Well, I can imagine it would be like trying to act in like those Halloween vampire teeth. you know?
and it was like that. But on the second movie, I managed to get it on the second movie. So on the second movie, I did practice with the grill.
Oh, nice.
so that I didn't have to do, because I hate dubbing stuff. I'd much rather that they use the original audio, because the original audio is with the actor and you're in the moment.
Yeah.
Whereas when you dub stuff, you're in a room on your own, sort of pretending.
You can't capture the same feeling.
No, and
Yeah.
you're like, I wish you could use the original. So on the second movie, I made sure I practiced with it.
Well, you saying that you can survive as an actor, make enough money, and all that. I wanted to ask if you do voice work. Is that something that you?
I've done a few bits and pieces on voice, but I didn't. So with Lisa, seeing as we have the same agent, I will tell you, I don't go in for any commercials or anything like that, because I just say to her, I don't want to do any of that stuff, because I don't think I'm that commercial actor. I don't think you're going to be able to find me selling coffee or meat, or whatever it is. I was like, I'm not. It doesn't really matter for me about the payday on those ones. It's just not something I'm trying to do. And full respect to anyone that can do it, but I find commercial auditions are like cattle calls. It's thousands of people, and it's not massively based on. I'm going to sound really offensive here. It's not massively based on the person's skill. It's just like you have to fit the exact thing they're looking for.
yeah.
But you may as well be cookie cutter, sort of placed in and placed out. And you're given no room. Nobody's ever watched a commercial and gone, my God, that was an impressive performance.
Yeah.
That sort of, it's either someone you don't know and they're just a moving prop type thing, or it's a famous person selling out, like George Clooney trying to do the espresso commercials, but then you're very aware that's George Clooney sort of giving his, hey, I'm George Clooney, I recommend this.
Seal of approval.
Yeah, sort of. But
And yet, oddly enough, a lot of big successful actors have old commercials and stuff that they did at one point appear in.
yes,
You can see
and,
on YouTube.
and whenever they're shown them at these interviews, they go, "Here's a commercial of you doing, a car, from
they're
30
just
years ago." They cringe,
hang their
because
head
they're
in
like, and they all tell the same story. Yeah, that commercial stuck around for like 4 years. It was like it was on everywhere.
Yeah.
They don't get paid enough for that.
They also do several big name actors will do foreign commercials, so they're not seen in America. So
It's
they
like
don't look like they're
Hasselhoff
still
being
out.
huge in Germany. For
Yeah, or Japan's a big place
Yes,
they go. Yeah.
Schwarzenegger can do a cell phone ad for just a Japanese network, knowing that it will never be seen in the States. So it
Exactly,
doesn't cheapen his overall appeal.
And I've got the feeling they're extremely lucrative too.
Oh, I think so. Yeah. When these, when you think about these guys, they're like when it's Apple or something like that, they've got big checkbooks.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's the Simon plan, is that I don't want to do a commercial until I get to a point where they're sort of they're going, hey, can you do this? As Simon, and you be selling cell phones or something, but as you, sort of. Now that will never happen, remember, because I'm not going down the Leonardo DiCaprio line. they never want the character actor to do it. Plus, Gary Oldman isn't going to sell cell phones. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's some actors you're like, well, no, they'll never engage with that. If you offer them that, they'll be like, hey, no, that's not for me. Sorry.
You're not going to see like Daniel Day-Lewis
no, he's not.
doing Pepsi commercials.
It doesn't matter if they cut him a check for $20 million for half a day's work. He's not going to do it, is he?
And then there's other actors that do that shit a lot. Like McConaughey and people who will.
The people that just
you got a watch? Yeah, I'll sell that shit.
Yeah. There's people that do it, and they, but they do it probably for the highest amount, don't they? Sort of, they wait till they're Matthew McConaughey. And
exactly.
You go, sure, I'll sell Lincoln cars for you, no problem. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I have a couple of fun random questions. Mainly one, actually. I tried to do a deep dive into your stuff, and I saw an old Instagram clip of you getting pulled over in Delaware, which you addressed as being the second time you had been pulled over in Delaware.
Delaware, yeah.
So this is just an entry to a question about if you had a favorite U.S. state to visit or work in.
Favorite U.S. I did a lot of work in Virginia, North Carolina, which is great. Other than New York and L.A., I love New York for just being New York. I don't massively love LA because it's a bit too close. Close as for actors. It's like,
as you described earlier.
Yeah, as I said earlier. But I really like Atlanta, and I really like Virginia and stuff. That some of those states. People are always saying that they feel pretty backwards, but actually they're breathtakingly beautiful if you drive through them. Last time I did a job in Florida, we drove all the way from here down there, and the drive is spectacular.
Wow.
Sort of not everywhere is pretty, sort of, and Americans are crazy in general, but there are some places that are particularly beautiful, sort of, that haven't been exploited too much, and then there's a kind of off the road places that you find on the way, and they're not particularly well advertised or anything like that, and they're not famous or anything like that. They're just nice spots.
Well, traveling in general is fun for that, just being outside of your known area and just finding cool things that you never would have seen otherwise.
I was telling people that it's because they're saying, it's great to, you do all these movies like in New Zealand, Australia. I've literally been everywhere doing stuff. And you're like traveling. Huh?
Antarctica?
To see, there you go.
Not yet.
I've been to Antarctica. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they do a lot of that for filming as well. Sort of,
really?
Yeah.
Holy shit. I was throwing that out there as just a random,
No. There's one place in Antarctica, McMurdo Station. That's the name of the... Anyway, this is a really random place.
Okay, I'm going to
There's only 1,000 people there. Anyway, there's no money or no nothing. It's great. It's like
a community, though?
It's like a science... It's actually a science installation and stuff like that. They study like penguins and...
Okay.
And ice, and I don't know how you study ice, but
they're there year round.
There are a bunch of people down there studying ice. I promise you, like 15 of them, ice samples from 1 million years ago. I once had a vodka and coke with ice that was 2 million years old.
What? That is so fucking.
Right. They like take the sample and they go, it's safe, but they're looking at the carbon in it or something, and they go, you put an ice cube in it, and you're like, there's a vodka and coke but the ice in it there is 2 million years old.
That is bananas. My dad's a scientist, so that's or has training in science. I don't know if you'd call yourself a scientist now, but that's still, man, that is insanely cool.
I'm able to tell you these stories, but. Traveling the world on your own is pretty lonely though, because you're like, you've kind of no one to experience this with. You meet a lot of cool people when you get there, but the problem like filming is, you film with these guys, you have lunch with them, you have dinner with them after filming, you have drinks with them, you all sleep in the same place, and then you wake up and you do it again. In 4 or 5 weeks, you become fast friends, like you feel like a family, and then you leave.
Summer camp or something.
Yeah, but and it's that exact same withdrawal after summer camp. You leave, and you're actually never going to see those people again, because chances are you'll never. You keep in touch now. It's easier on Instagram and so on and so forth. But really,
not those same kind of shared experiences, though.
Yeah. And then there's nobody there. So when you come home to your girlfriend or whatever, you they weren't there, so it doesn't matter. They didn't see it.
Damn. Yeah, it's definitely more fun to travel with somebody else. I think most people would agree with that.
Yeah, it's the other way, and then it's a shared experience, and then you have it together. Sort of. If it's on your own, it's definitely not the same.
Yeah, I mean, there's the argument at least that if you're on your own, you have less less literal luggage, but also less baggage. And as far as making plans, it's very easy when you only have to account for yourself.
Exactly.
As opposed to coordinating. Kids is a whole other.
There's a whole other person.
But even a friend going on a trip with a few friends, then it's, hey, what do you guys want to do tonight, as opposed to what do I want to do tonight?
I know there's that whole negotiation, isn't it? That's why you hope that your friends are very like-minded, because then you're like, well, we're going to go and get drunk, sort of, and that's as long as that's everybody's plan, that's fine.
Don't travel with people you hate. You heard it here first.
But then there's one person, isn't there, in the group that wants, I was going to go and visit the cathedrals, and you're like, yeah. And there's like, we don't have
or cathedrals.
We don't have to, and you're like, okay, can we visit just one cathedral and then go drinking?
Oh man, I don't want to forget to talk about your other movie that I assume is coming out this year later, hasn't come out yet, but with Mel Gibson, you were in a film called Panama.
I can't tell you anything about it because I don't know anything about it. No, I'm joking. But it's based on the invasion of Panama, obviously.
Was it filmed down there?
It was filmed in Puerto Rico.
Oh, okay, yes.
I don't think they'd let them film in Panama. Anyway, but I'm not sure actually. But yeah, that was that was one of the ones I was talking about. As soon as they were looking for a Brit. But it had to be in North America already, so they were like, can you work? And I was like, not just you had to be in North America, you had to have a right visa to work, you have to have a social security number and all the American stuff, and so it's quite hard.
Whittles down the competition.
It did a lot, so I was like, yes, I can be there. Mel Gibson.
Then you could say you've hung out with Riggs and John McClane. It's pretty epic as far as 80s action stars go.
Unlike the Bruce Willis picture, I wasn't in a scene with Mel Gibson. Oh, okay. So in fairness, I'm only in a, for me, I was like, hey, is he in the movie? And I'm like, yeah. So even if I'm not in a scene with him, I was like, I'm in a movie and he's in the movie as well.
Yeah.
That's fine for me still.
Yeah.
So yes, I've still got to work on that one. I haven't kind of done my Mel Gibson thing just yet.
Okay. I wasn't sure. Yeah. I saw it on your IMDb, but
no. So as in sort of, I've only been in a movie with him, but not been in a scene with him. That'll be my next step, is to actually be across the aisle from him doing
interacting.
Something. Yeah. But still,
you got anything else coming down the pipeline you want to talk about?
Oh yeah, we've got the Butcher's director Adrian Langley. We shot another movie. Do you know? I don't know if people are going to like this movie or not. It's called Ash and Dust. It's got myself in it. It's got Michael Swatton, who played my brother from Butchers, and we're both in this movie. And it's sort of a revenge thriller where Michael takes more of the lead role in this one. And it's a lot of very cool art. I'd say it was much more of an art house slow burn thriller rather than the Butchers sort of style, but it's the same director. Yeah, it's not a slasher so much, it's a revenge sort of thing, and it's called Ash and Dust, and it's out on March 11th.
Oh, so it's already wrapped and everything. Okay.
Oh, it's wrapped. Yeah.
Nice,
it's coming out, and then we've got can I plug something else?
Of course.
All right. Okay, I've got a TV show, Age of the Living Dead, and season 2 of that is coming out in I think it's May. Sorry, I should have really looked up.
Is that like a Romero spin-off kind of thing, or
it's very Romero? Yes, it's but with vampires. Sorry, so it's not zombies.
Oh,
actually.
Interesting. I thought it might be linked to all the there's Day of the Dead and
that's right,
Month of the Dead and Year of the Dead. They've got like a million of them.
Yes, no, it's not linked quite like that. But it's season 1 of it is on Amazon Prime right now, and season 2 is going to drop. I think it's in May, but it's coming up. I'm very excited.
Always a good sign if you've got a season 2, right?
Oh yes. If I get to season 4, the checks get ridiculous.
Oh really? Good. Interesting.
So I just got to keep. We're shooting season 3 soon, so I've got to hope that it pushes for another season.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
It's been a blast hanging out with you, man. I do have one question for season 3 that we've been asking everybody to wrap things up, which is what your dream job would be if you weren't doing this, and you can sort of piggyback onto that. What did you want to be when you were growing up?
Well, I'm there on that.
Oh yes,
now.
you already mentioned that. Actually.
I'm doing the job. The only job I could imagine myself doing. I have though told people if this doesn't work out, what I want to do is I want to be like a dishwasher or a long distance lorry driver. I'll tell you why. Because I really like a monotonous task where I'm just left alone with my thoughts. Like you don't have to think when you're washing dishes. You don't really.
It's meditative.
Yeah, it's sort of and I like just doing something repetitive and very dull like that. That doesn't require it doesn't require you interacting with people, definitely. But you get left alone with your thoughts and stuff like that. So that would be my alternative job. I would go completely the other way on it. I'd be a really good dishwasher, like, you know, sort of. I'd be the best dishwasher in the country for sure. But I like the solitude of it.
A blank mental slate to sort of
Yes,
explore
and then
your
you
imagination.
like things, you know, without people talking.
Yeah,
to
I'm realizing as you answered that how this question is specifically based on everything you had already talked about. Kind of shitty question for you.
No. I'm very lucky to every day I touch with that I'll be able to keep working, because that's the precarious life of being an actor. Is like you're like, well, people go, well, how do you know you're going to be get another job? And you're like, yeah, I mean, you have to be comfortable with that, you know, sort of. But you can, you know, you could be an accountant and get made redundant as an accountant. So you can fail at something you hate. You may as well kind of fail at something you love. So I was like, so don't worry about it. You know, it's like just knowing that worrying won't fix it.
Yeah.
You know, sort of do something and be proactive about it. Don't just wait for the phone to ring. You know, you have to. If you're an actor, go out and I would always recommend to young actors is like, if you're an actor, get a bunch of your friends together and film something, or put a play on, or write something, or produce something, or do you know what I mean? I was like, be proactive. Yes, it probably won't be good, but it's good to. It's positive, and you're mixing with the right people. You know, sort of the people that you went to drama school with, you know, one or two of them will end up being colleagues, and will, you know, will end up being friends in high places that will be able to help you later on.
Connections, yeah.
And that's definitely acting is all about knowing the person. It's all referral, and at least is a good agent, but you know, it's all referral, really. You know, people go, oh yeah, I saw you in, you know, sort of knows you from this, and you're like, great, yeah.
Well, I would
That
imagine
gets you a new job.
It must get easier as you build your resume, though.
It's the one thing that's good. It's cumulative, right?
Yeah.
The more work you do, the more you do work, the more people want you to work. That's, as an actor, that's always true. The more experienced you are, and the more things you're in, and the more, you know, people want you to work. If you're an actor going, yeah, I'm free anytime, I'm not doing anything right now, it's almost the guy's like, oh. But the minute I go to, you know, the minute you go, are you free? And I'm like, no, I've got 3 days in March, and then I can give you a week in April. But and then these guys try and make it work for you. They're like, okay, all right, hold on, let me see. The more busy you sound, the more
It
they
makes
try
sense,
to make
though.
it work. It does.
How many times does that happen in life in other avenues, you know, where someone's not interested in you romantically unless you're unavailable?
And-
oh, well, he's married? Ooh.
I know, but it's unfair. You
know.
think all the years, I was like, and for me, I was like, all the years when I was trying to be an actor, I was like really, really trying to make it work, and people wouldn't give you the time of day. And now those same people, you know, sort of will move schedules to make sure that you are in their things.
Crazy.
And you're like, you know, where were you like 10 years ago?
Yeah. Well, that's the journey, my friend.
I know, yeah. You have to keep going, keep positive, keep going.
Oh, it's been a blast chatting with you, man.
No, you too. Thanks.
I really appreciate you
and this
stopping
is like one of the best rooms. Unlike any other place, I've been in some of these sort of like DJ booths on the radio stations, and they're all just, you know, these soundproof rooms which feel like a room you'll die in anyway. This is a much. If I was going to die, this would be a room I'd actually pick to die in. Well done, guys. So I quite like the decor here.
We temporarily had our plexiglass barrier between us when at the height of COVID, which was a little bit awkward to say the least. We tried to make light of it with, you know, jail hands and.
It's Billy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I can. It's much better without all this, and I hope the world goes back to normal soon.
I think we're getting there.
Yes, one day at a time. But
We
yes.
say as World War III is currently, you know.
I know. Doesn't it feel like we've been all right for like 5 minutes? They go, guys, the end of the road is in sight. I was like, okay, let's just, you know.
What's next on the agenda? Yeah.
Yeah. It just, all that needs to stop.
Yeah. We need a cool, chill summer.
We do. Yeah, it was like, please, just, guys, can everybody hold it together? I was really alarmed because the LCBO pulled all the Russian vodka. I love vodka. And the LCBO were like, we're pulling all the Russian vodka off the shelves. And I was like, that's the first time I've been like, right, we need to get people to sit down and just talk because this can't go on.
But I mean, can you really taste the Russia in the vodka? Or
No, not really.
It all tastes like
I
rubbing
mix it
alcohol to me.
anyway, you know. So I'm saying that people often say, I love a vodka and Coke, which is a very British drink, by the way. Nobody here orders a vodka and Coke. And they were like, what type of vodka do you want? They're like, I mean, I'm ordering it with Coke, so you know, it doesn't really matter, does it?
Yeah,
I'm mixing it anyway, so the taste is going to be
A lot of good Polish vodka, so
Polish vodka. Yeah,
Is that Stolichnaya is Polish or no? Or is that Russian?
I think that's Russian.
that's
isn't it?
Russian.
That's the one I had as a kid a lot. Well, not as a kid, but you know.
No, you said it now.
Well,
And
as a
you've
youngin'.
said it now. Then
Oh, he knows all that shit.
well, cool. He knows you stole it now.
Oh no, he didn't. I don't know if you ever
He knows.
had any
He
stolen.
knows you watered it down.
Oh,
Yeah.
we've talked about that.
I know.
I know there's a vodka I keep hearing about that's Ontario based, I believe, called Vodcow, and it's like a
Yes.
milk.
Apparently, it's very good. Apparently,
Yeah.
So
But it's a different process for making it as opposed to potatoes being the go-to vodka.
It starts with milk, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, it's some sort of lactose ingredient in there. Yeah,
it sounds terrible now that you've started saying that. I didn't
It's still clear.
I've actually heard of the vodka and not known that. I've not connected the words in my mind, so I didn't realize that it wasn't potato based.
Yeah.
I'm Irish. I need it to be potato based.
Oh, fair.
I feel like I'm either getting one of my 5 a day or I'm adhering to my roots a little bit again.
Well, you think the Irish could make a decent vodka, but I don't know.
That's
I
not
think
their
they
thing,
do.
is it? What's Irish's drink, like whiskey?
Irish whiskey.
Yeah,
primarily.
whiskey, yeah. Which they're not probably great at making.
Well, I know there's some pretty good Irish whiskey.
My dad,
although
yeah,
I
you
prefer
drink a decent-
Scotch. Yeah.
Yeah. You went to some Scotch distillery in Scotland, didn't you?
No, but there's 2 that I really want to go see. From my
okay.
2 favorite
It's a
Scotches.
bucket list
right?
thing.
Yeah. Yeah, Lagavulin and Lafroig.
It was the same with Ron Swanson.
Yeah. Very peaty Scotches.
I don't know if you watched Parks and
Yeah,
Rec,
yeah, yeah.
but he
Yeah.
had an episode where
I
he
was
went
drinking it
to,
before that was on.
No, but he
Drinking
went to
before
a,
it was popular.
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
He specifically went to a distillery though in one of the episodes, and
You
it was,
weren't drinking it before it was popular. It's been popular for 200 years. What are you talking about? That was my setup for you there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't be a Scotch hipster. It's impossible.
No.
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll leave it at that. Thanks again for coming by, and thanks for everyone for watching.
Thanks for having me.
See you. Oh, high five at the end, man.
Oh, Ivan.
Cool.
Cheers.
Good time. Hit stains.